Back in 1993, Alan Emmerich rated his new game, Master of Orion, as 4X as a bit of a nerd joke referencing the XXX rating used for adult films. He explained this abbreviation as the following: explore, expand, exploit, exterminate. Less than a year later, this label had caught on, and the term 4X has been used to describe these sorts of games ever since. Games like Civ and Stellaris are great examples of this genre. You send scouts out to explore your world or galaxy, and then you expand your empire by colonising the new regions or planets that you've discovered. Once your settlements are up and running, you exploit the resources available to you, and then you use them to expand further, and finally, you exterminate your foes, either militarily, economically, or politically. These games can be turn-based or real-time, just like Civ or Stellaris. 4X games operate on a grand scale and tend to portray the growth of a civilization or empire over many years. The military forces you control in these games represent huge armies or fleets, and victory is normally about having the right sized force with the right upgrades, rather than fine tactical control. This sets them apart from RTS games, where your scouting, gathering and building only further narrow and immediate military goals, and your area of interest is generally a single battle or a series of engagements. So why am I telling you this? Well, last week I was talking about what a macro focused RTS would look like, and I remembered that I had Northgard. So after a 4-year gap since I last played, I reinstalled it and gave it another go. I started with my usual RTS mindset and found myself struggling through a game, and then it hit me. Northgard isn't an RTS. It looks like an RTS, and it does play in real time, but it's got all the hallmarks of a 4X title. I think Northgard is a great game, so I thought it might be a good idea for us to take another look at it together, as it's under $30 on Steam, and I thought it might just be what some people are looking for. The world of Northgard is heavily influenced by Norse mythology. You know, ravens, Valhalla, horns and all that sort of jazz. You control a clan of Vikings sent out to colonise a weird and wonderful new land, packed full of mythical creatures and rich with both opportunities and dangers. You are in competition with the local inhabitants like the kobolds or the ogres, as well as several other Viking clans. There are several clans to choose from, and although they all share a base framework, each one plays out a little differently, with different clans getting different bonuses and a few different buildings and units. They strike a good balance here. It's enough to give you a decent amount of variety, but you don't have to relearn too much when you decide to pick a different clan. The game opens up looking like an RTS. You have a town hall, some villagers, and some familiar resources like food, wood, stone, iron and gold. The last three are mainly tech resources and used for structures and upgrades, but the first two are a little different. While they still have their direct uses, they are also used as upkeep. Your villagers require food throughout the year to keep their bellies full, and if you run out they will become hungry, unhappy and start to lose health. 3 months out of the in-game year it will be winter, and it will be a lot harder to gather food, and your villagers will use a lot more firewood, so it's important to build up a stockpile for these times. Winter can be very harsh in the early game if you've not prepared properly, and even if none of your villagers end up dying, they will become very unhappy. And their happiness is important. You see, in Northgard you don't actually produce new units yourself. Villagers automatically spawn periodically, and the speed this happens is based on how happy your citizens are. If you have plenty of food, nice housing, rich entertainment, and are doing well, then you'll find that the new villagers pop up all the time. Once a villager has spawned, they will help to construct new buildings or forage for food, or you can assign them to a specific task such as iron mining or wood cutting. You can also train them as warriors, who will form a part of your warband that is used to conquer new territory or defend your territory from incursion from other clans or the native inhabitants of the land. The map is divided into lots of smaller territories. Each one can support a handful of buildings and normally has a few interesting features, such as a lake to fish in or an iron node to mine. To expand your budding empire, you need to assign a villager to be a scout, who will strike out from your settlement towards the unknown, exploring new regions and making them available to you. Once they have been discovered, you can move in your military forces, kill any creatures that already inhabit it and then claim it for yourself. Once yours, You can build structures there and take advantage of any of the natural features, of which there are quite a few. As well as the stone and iron we've already mentioned, there are others such as coasts for trading, wild animal packs for hunting, and mystic runes that you can assign villagers to in order to generate lore. Lore is another resource that unlocks another tech tree, providing bonuses to your whole empire. It can even be a win condition. Generate enough lore to unlock all of the improvements and you can end the game victorious. Of course, you're not the only one trying to do this. The other Viking clans are also trying to settle new regions and generate lore of their own. When neither of you are able to peacefully expand any further, you can then use your warband to try and take territory from your neighbour. This part of the game does handle a little like an RTS. You can move members of your warband around, position units and withdraw them at low health, but there is little micromanagement that needs to be done. You are generally only ever using a handful of units at a time, and just like any good 4X game, numbers, upgrades and strategic positioning are the most important thing here. It strikes quite a nice balance. It's just enough to make you feel involved, but not so much that it's always your primary focus. You can eke out a little bit more efficiency from your units with careful micro, but this isn't normally a problem, as your economy will govern itself for long enough to give you enough time to do that if required. One thing I've noticed after taking a long break from Northgard is that the amount of content in the game has really grown over the last few years. I am aware that some of the DLC they released did include some pretty significant bugs, but all of that seems long behind us now, and the game right now is not just functional but also packed with features and very polished. There are several game modes to pick from. The standard mode that I've had on in the background for the last few minutes is a free-form style of game where you build and play however you wish and compete against several other clans to reach one of the game's victory conditions. If you've not played before, then I think the second option, story mode, is a great place to start. It consists of a series of scenarios tied together by an overarching story, where you uncover the history of the land through the eyes of Rig, the new leader of the Stag clan. Story mode introduces you to both the lore and the mechanics in a very satisfying way, and each mission begins with a short cutscene that is narrated by Rig himself. It's quite minimalist, but just enough to let you know what the deal is without boring you too much with loads of dialogue. During the missions there are a few other interactions, but these take the form of a few text boxes and add a little flavour to the mission, but not much else. Alongside the standard and story modes, there is also a conquest game type which involves some extra challenges that you can play along with a friend, which is a nice touch. Rounding out all of these game types is of course multiplayer, in which you can fight with or against other players in the game's standard mode. The game's still quite popular and it's not difficult to find a suitable lobby. As well as all of the normal modes, the game is fully mod supported and there are thousands of them to try on the Steam Workshop. They even include a link to the Getting Started guide for writing your own mods, which is another nice touch and probably one of the reasons why there are so many mods available to download. One final thing worth a mention is there are also a series of challenges you can undertake. The daily ones are, as you might expect, things like winning a game or producing a certain amount of resources, but there are also ones for completing story missions and interacting with other parts of the game. The challenges reward you with silver bars, which you can use to purchase cosmetics for the game, such as new unit skins or decorations. Overall, I think Northgard is a great game, and it would be a good addition to any strategy fan's library. At a quick glance, it does look a little bit like an RTS, and if you only played it for a few minutes you could easily think it's a bit like Age of Empires. But don't be fooled, Northgard plays out like a 4X title. It has a lot of depth and is very much its own game. One thing I personally love is the pacing. Some 4X games can get a bit out of hand when you get past the mid game, and the end game can feel more like a chore than a reward, but this is not the case with Northgard. It's a well designed, well written and feature packed game that's properly presented with some nice graphics and a fitting soundtrack. If you're a fan of 4X games, or love RTS but want a little slower paced experience that you can relax into, then I thoroughly recommend Northgard. As I said earlier, it's less than $30 right now on Steam, and not only do you get a great game, but you also get that nice warm fuzzy feeling of supporting an independent studio. Hi, I'm Calivan. If you've not played Northgard before, then I hope I've given you a decent overview and piqued your interest. If you've already got Northgard and you're a fan, then I hope I've done the game justice. If you've got anything to add about the game, then please write me a comment, and if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate a like. I upload a new video about strategy games every 3 or 4 days, so if you want to see more, click the subscribe button.